Dr. Michelle Prince. A very, very warm welcome to the Humans versus Retirement podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I can't wait for this conversation. We were speaking briefly before hitting record, so I can't wait to kind of delve in and talk about your expertise. And ultimately, one of the reasons why, or the main reason why you're sitting here is, well, two main reasons actually. One, your personal journey, which I want to delve into, and that personal journey has obviously led you write a wonderfully entitled book called Creating Your Encore Career, a guide to prosperity and purpose in your third act. For listeners of the show, they know that I don't like the word retirement. I think I found a fellow person, Michelle, that doesn't like the word retirement. So I love the way that we're trying to kind of define this as people's third act. So what I'd love, Michelle, what I'd love you to do is just, explain to the listeners your journey and what motivated you to write a book about working in and creating kind of an encore career in the third act of life.
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me. Today, I am a global leadership coach. I am a senior career coach. I do HR technology advisory work. I also do some human capital consulting. I've been enjoying this as my encore career for about 4 years now. Prior to that, in my previous career, I was 30 years in corporate human resources roles, leading organizational transformation efforts, leadership development programs. So really my passion has always been to help professionals, leaders, and organizations achieve transformational growth. My journey into my Encore career started really at the end of 2019. I was a senior vice president of human resources, nearing the end of really what was a wonderful 3-year international work assignment, my second international assignment during my career. I needed to figure out what I wanted to do next. What happened was my job was being eliminated. There were no corporate roles at that time in that company that were equitable and really nothing I felt I wanted to do. So I was in a layoff situation, but I was really okay with making a change. Initially, I had thought of job searching for my next corporate role, as many people who are laid off feel that way. And because I was at the time 55 years old, I felt I really had time for one more corporate role in my career. I also still had my youngest son in college, so reality was I needed to maintain a certain level of income, or so I thought, to support our family needs. So situationally, I had always thought maybe one day I would start to do coaching and consulting on my own, but I felt that was a bit further in the future, maybe even a little out of reach. At the time, it was, again, end of 2019. But instead, after talking it over with my husband and a few trusted advisors, in early 2020, I took a leap and decided to step out of corporate work environment and start my own coaching and consulting. That's when Consulting was established formally. Funny story, my husband had actually bought the URL and domain for me about 16 years before that. He said, one day you're going to want to be out on your own. He could foresee that for me.
Fantastic.
And he bought that domain. I didn't even know what a domain was at the time. So I said, sure, whatever. But that's the journey. And since leaving corporate, I've had the honor of helping hundreds of people achieve their goals. I've helped companies achieve their various organizational transformation efforts, all as my own Encore career.
It's fascinating that that I think, quote me if I'm wrong here, but I think what maybe one of the reasons why you wrote the book is because you probably saw that, how the impact of doing that had on your kind of, second half of life, third act, retirement in brackets. And maybe how you saw how other people are starting to think about redefining what this phase of life is. And obviously being a very successful businesswoman and having everything, or having a lot of your purpose and identity wrapped up in the work that you did firsthand, you went through that kind of transition. So I'm really interested to find out, directly from you, really, the author of the book, and this is a personal journey, obviously, you've been through, and the research that you've done to to write the book. What is an encore career? First up, right? What is it, and why do you think people are redefining, the word retirement, but also what retirement means to them and what they think about this phase of life, and effectively unretiring? Why do you think this is happening, and what's the movement behind the people doing this?
Yeah. Well, I want to also say that during this transitional time for me, I had a coach who had also done the transformation from corporate into coaching and consulting. So I had a guide on the side that I was very, very fortunate to have. A lot of people don't have that luxury, and that's why I wrote the book, because a good number of my clients over the past few years have been people who are approaching or reaching retirement age, let's say close to 55 or a little bit older, and seem to have that same kind of questioning, what they wanted to do next. Did they want to still pursue another full-time job, or maybe they wanted to take their foot off the gas pedal a little bit? Maybe they were starting to feel burnt out, or starting to recognize how burnt out they were, and wanted something different and more meaningful, and most importantly, by design, especially if they were in a layoff scenario where they were no longer in control of their own careers. And it feels daunting if you are 50 and older to try to do a job search at our age. Many, frankly, don't even know how to job search in today's technology-driven recruiting environment. And really, the idea of, do I have enough to make this transition? Enough meaning financially, am I secure enough? Do I have some kind of pension or 401k if you're in the US, or other government supplement? And we could talk more about the financial aspect of creating your Encore career. But they just knew they needed something different, and that's who inspired me to write the book. They were saying the coaching I provided was so helpful for them, and asked if it would be okay if they shared the tools and learnings with their friends in their circles, because they were the same age, and also talking about what to do next, and may not have been able to afford to hire a coach. So I felt like if there was a need, why not make it accessible to everyone? So I wrote the book as really a step-by-step guide for people who are approaching retirement age. Although even if you're only 47, 45 even, you might want to have a plan. You might want to be in control of this transition into a different way of spending the 5 or 10 years prior to full retirement. And I wanted this to be fully accessible, so it's downloadable from Amazon for just 99 cents. The whole point is that anyone can have access to this type of coaching who would want it.
I think you've made actually a really, really interesting point that I just want to kind of explore on. And again, this is just that there's no kind of necessarily huge amounts of research baked in what I'm going to say. There's a bit of a gut feel, and also some anecdotal things that I've observed working with people. But I think it's fair to say that most people approaching this kind of phase of life are maybe thinking that there's two options, right? They kind of, you stop work and you do nothing, right? That kind of, so, and also if option, so that's first option, right? I stop work, I do nothing, or I scale down my time but carry on doing what I'm doing. Those are the two things that I hear a lot, because I think there's a nervousness about putting yourself back out onto the market. I suppose it might be a bit like being, and again, I don't, being in this phase of life and having to start dating again, right? If you've been married for 30 years and all of a sudden you're not married through whatever circumstances, I'd imagine it's a really difficult thing to kind of go, well, I've no idea how to do this anymore. When I done it, I used to kind of respond to ads in the newspaper. Now there's websites that you go on. This is very different. So I think there's some trepidation, right, around, well, actually, this is too much like hard work. So I'll either full stop, I'll stop completely, or just go to 4 days a week or 3 days a week. And I often see that as very unfulfilling for people because they're not, they're not moving on to something that can really, really help. Is that fair? Is that observations that you think that you've seen or may have felt yourself?
I would agree. I would agree. And actually going to a reduced schedule or flexible work schedule may be something that is part of your Encore career if that's what you choose. But redefining and transforming is slightly different because, well, we know that traditional retirement age starts often between 60 and 65, depending on what country you live in, depending on what pension schemes you have. Many countries around the world are actually redefining retirement age already. You might have seen some of that in the news where countries that are moving from 60 to 62 for full retirement are now moving to 65 or 68. They are recognizing that people can work longer, and given the workforce needs, maybe they need people to work longer, so they're incentivizing or decentivizing whatever the retirement. And so it's okay if you work until full retirement age. And I believe in the UK it's similar to the US. You can take full retirement government benefit at age 67. You can take it reduced earlier than that. But with that, if you're 55 or in between 55 and 60 and you don't want to keep doing what you're doing, you might not feel, to your point, that you have any options. But with the coaching that I do and hopefully with the book, people will see that for the next 5 or 10 years before full retirement, you do have options. And what might those be? So really thinking about what your Encore career could be is not a luxury that everybody has, but a lot of people actually have that opportunity who don't realize that it's an option at this time.
Yeah. You mentioned something there as well that I think you talk about, in your book, and that is, I think, like increased like lifespans, right? Age is a big thing here, and also I think kind of evolving aspirations. Human beings have evolved, I think, or in over the last 30, 40 years, or people that are retiring, in a way that I think we are more aspirational. We are more open to growth. We understand, and we understand that 65 is not old. I mean, go back 2 generations, most 65-year-old people were old, right? 65 is not old anymore. And I do think people are looking at this going, well, if I do want to, for whatever reason, start to think about stopping what I'm doing now or scaling back, and I'm 55 or 60, God, I could have 30 years of playing golf. Doesn't sound very attractive, right? There's a whole, that's why I like the second phase, third act.
Yeah.
There's a whole another lifetime to think about here, and 30 years of leisure, as much as it might sound appealing, I guarantee everybody listening that it isn't, and you need more purpose than that. So I do think that's the reason why more and more people are starting to explore other avenues post kind of maybe the career that they've had or what they want to do.
Yeah, it's so true. Money is important, but it's not typically the primary driver of an Encore career. It doesn't hurt to supplement your retirement savings or perhaps wait a little longer to take any government retirement payments you could be eligible for. But it's not the primary driver of this Encore career being semi-retirement. It's really about what is purposeful or meaningful to you, what aligns with your personal values. Do you want to continue to contribute to society in some way? And have it provide flexibility to enjoy a couple days of golf, maybe a week, right? So weaving it together, working with hobbies, with things that you enjoy doing, or even spending more time with family or whatever it is. And we go through figuring out what is important to you that you want to do in your life. Although I'm not a life coach, but what do you want to do in your life? And how can you weave part-time work or flexible work or a reduced work schedule in with how you do want to spend more time? And really, a lot of this is only recently available. The thought of freelancing or consulting or gig work or really has only come about in the last 5 years. The onset of technology platforms, the opportunity to work remotely is really only in the last few years. And so it's the prime time to think about how you can work and still have flexibility. And that's your Encore career. And I've heard you mention on previous podcasts also the 100-year life. And that was actually one of the inspirations for me personally. I had the pleasure of working with Linda Gratton when I was leading programs at the London Business School. And we talked about the 100-year life, and we talked about that third act, right? Education, work, retirement is no longer where we need to be as a society. Really, education, that primary career, what could be that encore career prior to full retirement. So that book was certainly a bit of an inspiration as well.
Yeah.
So
it's
in fact,
brilliant.
one of my clients recently said to me, she feels like 60 is the new 40.
Yeah.
She retired from her corporate role at 62, was financially in very good shape thanks to her retirement savings. She was smart, and also the U.S. Social Security benefit would be a supplement. But it was the vibrancy and energy she had that she wanted to continue to still work. So we didn't really talk about why people are living longer, but people are living longer mainly because jobs are not as hard physically as they used to be. We're in the stage of knowledge workers, right? And advancements in healthcare. So people are not just living longer, but living healthier longer. Dan, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, because that leads to another challenge, right? You would understand, as someone who advises on financials, that some people haven't been able to save enough to feel like they could be comfortable leaving a full-time corporate role. So to your point, they need to have a feeling of comfort or safety in their savings before they can feel comfortable stepping out of full-time work.
Yeah, 100%. There's two folds. I talked about it on one of the podcast episodes recently. There's two elements to this thing when it comes to money, Michelle. I think one, people are very, very good at spending from income, but very, very bad at spending from capital. So, spending a salary or spending a bonus or spending regular income coming in, people have got, we're psychologically wired. That feels okay. I've got a balance over here. I've got a retirement account, a pension fund, whatever it looks like. To deplete that, to see that go down intentionally is quite a challenge for us to do. So there's research out there that suggests that income coming in allows people to spend more money in totality, right? Because you can spend income better than you can spend capital. I do see people struggle if they could stop work completely and all they've got is an investment pot to draw on. They really struggle to completely let go of the shackles to spend the money that's needed. So I think that's a challenge for people. I think the longer that we can have income coming into our lives, the more that we will spend, as long as it's planned intentionally in a way that income coming in and the work you do doesn't then fill you with the ability, it fills you with, what am I looking for? Kind of another time constraint, right? You're kind of wed to another work. You're thinking about, you can't go on holiday. You need freedom and flexibility. And I think that's kind of back to your point, the modern gig economy and the availability to work on your terms, wherever you want, whenever you want, I think is such an exciting opportunity for people. So I think that's one thing. But to your point, people are acutely aware of more longevity in general. They are acutely aware that their money probably will have to last longer than their parents and definitely have to last longer than their grandparents. So, and again, I think if we take away the financial benefits, because that's not the main driver, but actually as a byproduct, you're getting some financial benefits when we do kind of planning work, even earning, and I'll do it in pounds, even earning 10 or 15,000 pounds, 20,000 pounds a year for a 10-year period has such a material impact on the longevity of their investment pot.
Absolutely.
You know, and my point to people listening is this doesn't have to be replacing a 100 grand a year job with another 100 grand a year job. This is replacing, you know, earning 10, 15, 20,000 by doing the work you want to do, freeing up some time, has such a big impact on long-term cash flow planning.
And health and well-being.
Oh, look.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in the U.S., currently there's over 10 million people working who are over 65. Now, I don't know if that's because they want to work or because they have to work. I really don't know. But there is something real called retirement insecurity. And AARP recently did a study where they found out that 20% of adults, and this is probably in the U.S. only, have no retirement savings at all. It's highly likely they didn't work at companies that offered 401k type savings vehicles, so they weren't really promoting or encouraged to do it, or perhaps they just weren't in a financial position to save for the future or weren't thinking that they needed to, whatever. But over 60% of people surveyed said they worry they will not have enough money to support themselves in their retirement. And most startling is only 30% of women who regularly save believe that they're saving enough for retirement. So with that, you know, Social Security in the U.S., it's only meant to be a replacement of less than half your pre-retirement earnings. And so to your point, people need to have a more feeling of financial security, and working in an Encore career or some kind of flexible gig or part-time job can help give them that, where they don't have to take from that pot as early as they might need to if they weren't continuing to do some kind of paid work. Now, there's also volunteering, mentoring. There's a lot of other things you can do in an Encore career, but everyone's financial situation is different. So it really just depends on where they are.
I want to kind of marry this up into something else and then ask you another question about this. Working with people between the ages of 50 and 65, 70, I think that these people are almost at the peak of their careers, right? They think of, you know, maybe 40 years worth of knowledge, and maybe you've gone through this, right? One of the reasons why a lot of people step out of corporate world and I believe launch consulting businesses is because all the knowledge and experience and information you've gathered over your career is now at a point where you can give back on your terms, right? You've got this information, you've got experience, you've got knowledge and wisdom. It feels a shame that people in their fees would almost feel like they need to not contribute anymore, right? So I think what we need to try and get across here is that actually people at this stage of life have probably more to give than they've ever had to give, and not concentrating on the financials. And I'm not going to ask your financials, but because of that wisdom and knowledge that you've experienced, actually your probably earning power per like time spent working is probably as big as it's ever been. And I want everyone to realize that, because if you're in a job that you don't necessarily like, but it's okay, but you understand from a financial perspective that you've got to continue working for a prolonged period of time post, say, 55, doesn't mean you have to stay there, right? You can go, well, actually, I have got passion, I've got certain strengths, I've got knowledge, I've got an understanding of things. I can go and shift this now because I've got this, you know, this accumulated knowledge and wisdom. And so 2 questions. One, like, is that a thing? Because that observed, so I'd love to get your comments on that. But also, what would your advice be as someone that's kind of consulted on this to help someone kind of identify those passions, values, and strengths? Because if they identify them, they could go and find something a lot easier and transition into the Encore career.
Yeah. And I would even say that people in their 40s can be thinking about this now.
100%.
Because
Yep.
people spend more time planning a vacation than they do their own career, or having an exit strategy, as I call it, from corporate. And so 40 is not too soon to be thinking about it, just like it's not too late to start saving for retirement. It's a great time to think about your self-reflection. What are your passions? Or what are your values? What are your strengths? And really, there's some very good guidance in the book to help people figure this out. But it's very simply, what do you want to do? What are you really good at? What type of work environment do you typically thrive in? Who do you want to serve or support or have impact with? And how much do you really want to work? How many hours? Define your working hours. What are your boundaries? And figuring that out. The woman that I mentioned before, 62, looking to do some work, when she retired, her daughter felt like she was a built-in full-time babysitter at that point. And she's like, no, you need to help me find some work so that I don't have to be expected full-time. And there's some parts of the book too where it talks about having conversations with your family about what your Encore career looks like and the boundaries that you need. It's so empowering to think about designing your own. And then there's the aspect of income, right? What do you need? What do you expect? What do you want to make? And then figuring out how to take all those ingredients and transition into some kind of a Encore career flexible work environment or freelance role that's going to meet the criteria that you've set. It's super empowering to think that you can create and design your own scenario, especially after being in corporate for so long and being at the mercy of promotion policies and advancement policies and job search and all of those things that have really confined you. People may not realize the options, and I try to point out those options in the book.
Excuse me. I think it's actually really interesting about the kind of being a parent and a grandparent at this stage of life, right? I think you have to be really intentional about this, because there could be an expectation from your children that you're retiring to be kind of a full-time grandparent, that, you know, oh, I'm going to work, you're here now. And also, I have seen it where if you're not intentionally communicating that, then there can be some trouble in the family around, well, I've gone back to work because I thought that you would help out more. So I think it's a very, very valid point. You know, if this is something that you want to do, actually you're entering into a stage of life where other people might start to have expectations of you that you don't necessarily want them to have. So it's important that you communicate that through to people. So I think it's a great observation that you made there, Michelle. The other thing, briefly before we move on, is that I do a lot of. I'm a big fan of Ikigai, the Japanese, and so I take people through an Ikigai exercise to think about, you know, their purpose and, you know, their strengths, etc. So I think it's very similar to what you're to what you're saying, which I think so. For anyone there, Google it. It's and I've talked about it a lot in the podcast. You've mentioned on a couple of occasions, Michelle, stuff like the gig economy and volunteering, etc. How can, you know, do you have any advice or any first-hand experience around how people can start to identify kind of what they should pursue as their encore career? Because as you said, the world is much more open to stuff now than what it was even 5 years ago.
It starts with self-reflection, much like the work that you do. And reflecting on your passions. So what's the driving force of what truly excites you? What activities really ignite your enthusiasm? What could you spend hours doing without feeling like it's work? I like asking those kinds of questions. Sometimes the core values of someone can help them through the self-reflection and understand who they want to serve or what they want to do in terms of what matters to them. And then, you know, interests. So what piques your curiosity? I love encouraging people to continue their education of some kind. And again, with today's technological environment, you can take online classes so easily at your fingertips. You could get a certification in something. So some people who are moving into an Encore career might not feel they have the credentials to do what they want to do. I was fortunate that I had already been a certified coach, got my doctorate back in 2015. So I knew I had the credentials to do what I wanted to do in my Encore career. But I talked to a lot of people who have a bit of imposter syndrome. Why would someone want to hire me? Blah, blah, blah. And so we walk through what does that mean and how can you overcome that. So sometimes expanding your knowledge or gaining additional education or certifications is an important part of that journey into your Encore career. And also, I think, what have you been good at in your career? I get so much of my business through referrals of people I've worked with over 30 years, leaders I've worked with who are at different companies now, HR professionals. I didn't plan it that way, I'll be honest with you, but in the book, I encourage people to plan on a great way to use their professional network during the transition into Encore Career and beyond. I was fortunate to have an extensive professional network, and if you don't, it's not too late to start one. And I talk a lot in the book because it's very career driven about how to create a network if you don't have a professional network. Too many times, and this is so important, especially for women, we are so busy at work with our heads down doing our job. And then when we're home, we are usually primary caregiver. There's no time to develop a network oftentimes when you're working. But when you're trying to transition into an Encore career, it's one of the most valuable tools in your toolbox. So it's not too late to start thinking about creating a network of professionals and professional networking and how you do that, the latter part of your career. Once you've identified what those are and your strengths and your unique talents, then you kind of create what I call your unique value proposition. And that also helps you start to create a brand of what you want to be in your Encore career. Again, it's very empowering to think about you have the strength, you have the talent to define and create what you want to do. It's truly exciting when people can define and articulate their unique value proposition and what they want to do and who they want to do it with and why. It's really weaving all these together for this purposeful, meaningful Encore career.
I think I've said a lot. I know you've said something really important there that I want to touch on. The network it is such an important aspect of this. And I really appreciate and haven't really thought about what, the difference really between maybe, men and women, not like full-time work and not that there are many women that work high-powered full-time jobs that have got extensive networks. If you're not in corporate world, it might be challenging to have that network. So maybe it isn't a man-woman thing, but if you're not in corporate world, it's challenging. But there's so many people, I think, that underappreciate the network that they have built up over a period of time. They don't understand how many connections they have. They don't understand how. I mean, I've spoke to a few people that, unfortunately, I'm trying to get my LinkedIn account back. I got hacked, and it's been, and I've got years of work on there. But anyway, but LinkedIn's really interesting because I've had conversations with some retirees that have gone, "Oh, I'm stopping corporate work. I'm shutting down my LinkedIn account." I'm like, no, don't do that. You have got thousands of potential networking people to, if you want to do, you've got stuff, right? And I think even when I've spoken to couples and there is, someone that has not been in corporate world and stayed at home, I still think there's an underappreciation of the network of people that you have built up over that period. So I think that's so vital, that the network piece.
Yeah, and how they define their network is definitely based on both personal and professional, family connections. Yeah. It's really your whole ecosystem that you live in, and everybody is potentially someone who can help you in your Encore career.
Yeah, and you've mentioned something I really want to touch on for a few minutes here, kind of personal brand, because I think this could be something that's really important to get our head around at this stage of life. And it comes twofold for me. I think understanding your personal brand is foundational maybe to your why and your purpose, but also creating a personal brand can really help in thinking about what you want to do and who you can appeal some stuff to, or appeal your knowledge and work to. I know there's someone called the Grandma Backpacker, who in her 80s is like a YouTube vlogger who's going around, and she's built this wonderful personal brand around backpacking and hiking. There's someone in their 90s that skydives, and she's done multiple and films it all and puts it on, and the ability to kind of do something you love, earn a bit of money from it, feel a bit of a status thing, get a new network of people, build that. So I think a lot of people will look at this and go, well, that personal brand stuff, that's for those TikTokers in their 20s, right? But actually I think you go on YouTube and just like Google some of it or search some of this stuff on YouTube. There are so many people that have left corporate world and built personal brands that have around things that they love to do, that they have energy about, and are truly smashing it. And the money's just a byproduct. They've built this thing. So I'd love to kind of hear, you've done this firsthand. So, what are some things that people can think about to start to build personal brands at this stage of life?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example of this one woman that I follow. Actually, she's not been a client, but I love and I'm so impressed with what she's done. But she talks about her journey of working in retail for many, many years and just really loving being stylish. And so it wasn't necessarily her thought about having any kind of a Encore career related to style. It was more retail. But as she got into it, she realized that her style is her brand. And so it gets back to the question about, what do you want to be known for? What impression do you want people to have of you? And what do you want people to say about you when you're not in the room? Basically, this is your brand, whether it's your professional brand in a corporate environment or personal brand. So really by actively shaping people's perception of you, you're choosing your brand, and how you show up can help you overcome assumptions and biases about people your age, especially for people over 60, because what's known as ageism is real and unfortunately deeply embedded in our society. And some people will encounter that as they move into different phases of their latter part of their career. But this woman, she took her interest in style, loves that her purse matches her shoes, or not matchy, but a beautiful complement of her array of outfits and things. And that's what she does now. And because of the brands that she was showing on her channel, she now has sponsors from these well-known brands that they send her their products and they want her to demonstrate them and show them as part of her ensemble. She has created for her. She's, by the way, making a whole lot more now as a brand influencer than she ever did in her retail.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal, but none of this could have even been thought of 5 years ago, or maybe, especially for people over 60. So it's really about creating your brand and emphasizing your strengths and expertise and relevance. And that may include creating an online presence, or it may be something that just enables you to showcase your achievements. Like you said, by the time you're in this part of your career, you're smarter, you've had more experience, you are more mature, and you have this work ethic and you know what it takes to get work done and good work. And to just stop that at that point in your career seems like you're cheating the world. So whether it's through thought leadership or on LinkedIn or public speaking or just presenting yourself to the world, you're inspiring others. And that's a wonderful part of the Encore career. If that's what you want to do, is inspire others, there's so many ways to do that through your own brand.
I also think it really plays into one of the key foundational things about us as human beings. I couldn't find the word. So whenever I can't find the word, I say things, which probably doesn't make any sense. And that is growth. So, human beings, our brains are wired to move forward, right? We like growth, and you've mentioned it a couple of times. The ability to learn and grow shouldn't stop, and our ability to find this career, build our personal brand, allows us to get outside that comfort zone a little bit and grow again. You know, you mentioned public speaking. I've done quite a bit of it. It used to scare the life out of me. It doesn't scare me anymore. You've probably done quite a lot of your fair share, as I know. But some people I know they've got, I'd love to stand up and talk about this or do, but I am so scared. Well, go on a course, figure out something, go online, put that as such a major goal that you want to do. That growth and learning and moving forward is going to give you so much well-being, you know, in there. It's going to prevent cognitive decline. It's going to keep yourself sharp. You're going to be much more resilient. You're going to be more focused. You know what I mean? You're going to have more energy. So I think growth to me is a key word, and one of the biggest benefits of kind of finding an encore career. I'd love to understand from you what you think of that, and also what are some of the other big benefits of, you know, you've listed them, but as we kind of start to wrap up the conversation, I'd love for you just to kind of go, well, actually, look, here's what you're going to get from doing this. Because I think there are some really, really core things that this will enable people to feel.
Yeah. Well, I love the word growth. I relate to the word growth. I would add to that curiosity. So I talk with my clients a lot about staying curious, because curiosity means you can always learn, or you're always asking for information because you're curious rather than going to even apply it somewhere. People go, I know a couple of my clients, I've encouraged them to go to the library, and they said, well, what should I look for? I said, I don't care. Just go to the library and find a book that piques your curiosity. Because for so long they were so focused on their career or their work, or, you know, something that was so pivotal in driving their success, that they've lost that childish curiosity. And that doesn't enable you to think bigger, broader, allow for more to come into your life if you're too closed off. Some people, I talk about taking up you know, all joking aside, have you ever tried pickleball? Because that's now, you know, the new sport. Although it can be played by older people, but I'll tell you, I get beat by a lot of younger people these days. But it's a sport that's new, and if you've not tried it, try it. Oh, I won't be good at it. So what? So why are you so judgmental on yourself? Get more curious. And yes, it could allow growth, or it could just allow for you to experience different things. I think that's a very important part of the Encore career, because if you're too focused on continuing to do what you've always done, then you're not really allowing yourself to explore bigger. And I think having a healthy work-life balance, staying active physically, mentally, emotionally, and socially are huge parts of staying healthier, living longer, and through an Encore career, continue to supplement your retirement savings. But it's time that you have to be more purpose-driven, whether it's through mentoring, volunteering, philanthropy. You can do that in addition to Encore Career working, because you have time. Build it into the plan. I want to volunteer 10 hours a month. Okay, great. Let's build that into the Encore Career plan. What do you want to do? Well, I don't know. Well, let's get curious and let's figure that out. It's such a different way of thinking about what your life can be. And it just opens up so many new ways of thinking.
I love those two words. I mean, I have talked a lot, and you've kind of taken the words out of my mouth. I love explore and curiosity, or exploration. And I've talked a lot about childlike. I've penned a few things that I want to turn into something a bit more than just a blog about. I think it's for the first time since we were children, we can explore with curiosity, with true freedom. Like, it feels like, you know, that somewhat has been suppressed through our corporate or working career, I have tried to encourage some of my clients that are more open to going back to when they were children. Some people, it's hard for them to go there through various different reasons. But if you can go back and think of the wonder you had as a kid and how you just explored and you were curious and you asked questions and you allowed yourself to kind of go in, and a bit like the library example, you know, it's kind of, I'll go in and find out what's what. I'll just, you know, feet first, see. If we can take that attitude into this, I think it's going to be, you know, amazing for people. So I love those two words. Encourage everybody to kind of write those two words, well, 3 words, I think: growth, curiosity, and exploration. I think are 3 key words to kind of building this out.
Absolutely. And I do think it has a foundation of financial security, especially towards the end of your career, where if you do reduce your earnings, do I have enough? Right? We've started talking about that. And there is a chapter in the book dedicated to financial preparation. But I don't want moving into the Encore career to increase your stress or anxiety, your income. And so a well thought out financial plan can really empower people to make these important career transformations and life choices. Yeah. Some people choose to downsize. Some people don't have to. Some people, you know, feel like they have a good sense of their cushion for retirement, but they don't know. And that was certainly something I had to do in my journey with my husband, was sit down with our financial advisor and ensure that, because he was already working in a semi-retired, self-employed way as well, if we both started doing that, would we have enough based on our, you know, he's a little older than me, but not much, but based on our expected longevity, right? Yeah. And once we had that level of comfort, we could move on. But I know that risk does hold people back. So I strongly encourage people to speak to a financial advisor if they've never have, or just, there's websites that can also help them figure that out. And, you know, the important questions that everybody has on their minds towards the end of their career: do I have enough money so I won't run out of money? Am I on the right track with any of my investments? Should I be making changes to my investments given the change in my work status? What about my taxes? What impact does that have? And a lot of what the clients I work with, they want to avoid becoming any kind of financial burden to their family. So they need that level of comfort to know that it's okay and that they feel secure in making this transition. There's no magic number. It has to be whatever they feel based on the lifestyle that they've lived.
Yeah. One of the observations I see is that people make the mistake of focusing too much on one of the other. So it's kind of, I need a financial plan, or I need a retirement plan, right? And actually they need to go hand in hand, right? You know, in order for the money to work, you need to understand what you're going to do with your time. In order to really let go and understand what you can do with your time, you need to understand the money. And I think so many people go, I'm going to get a financial plan, and it doesn't solve the retirement problem because they have no idea what they are retiring or to, right? They have no idea what they want to do with it. So, and vice versa, people have this thing over here and they go and see life coaches or other coaches. And it's like, well, you might have all of this, but what can your financial resources support? And that's why I think, you know, real retirement planning involves professionals that can help you on, you know, in total, on a big scale of life, money, meaning, purpose, because it all can wrap itself up.
And very few, some people focus as a retirement advisor, some as a career coach or a lifestyle coach, but rarely, you know, are the two meeting. But it's really the person themselves has to have a holistic approach, lifestyle, budgeting, changes to investment and financial planning are very important. There's also another aspect, particularly in the US, which is managing healthcare and insurance costs. Because we're not in a society where that's covered. So if you lose your benefits of medical, dental, and insurance because you leave your full-time career, you need to make sure you have coverage, especially later in life where you may have some health issues before you're eligible for government support. So that's also a holistic approach to, are you ready for an Encore career?
Yeah. Michelle, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I can't thank you enough for kind of reaching out and talking about this stuff. It's so important. And your book and the work that you do in helping people with the transition and actually starting to redefine this, I think is all part of a really exciting movement of people and evidence and life experiences that are now sharing this with the world. I've interviewed people that have written books on this podcast that have done it for themselves, right? They've written a book that shared their journey and their story and helping people. And I think it's so amazing that that's happening. So I'll put links to your book in the show notes. But yeah, just like anything final from you in terms of people thinking about this encore career.
Stay curious. Nothing is out of limits, and if you want to create it, you probably can. If the book isn't enough, ask some trusted advisors or get a coach. Don't necessarily just write it off as something that wouldn't be something you can do, because I truly feel anyone can really create their own Encore career.
What a wonderful place to leave it. Wise words there. So thank you so much, Michelle, for joining me today.
Thank you.
And that just leaves me to thank everyone once again for joining me on the Humans versus Retirement podcast. Until next time, take care.